So, on to our first keynote. So, I've known Narelle for a long time. She was one of my first yoga teachers, actually. So, she's come a long way since then. But Narelle grew up in country New South Wales, and her family ran a dairy farm and a pub. So, from 24 hours around the clock, you must have been a very busy family. It says your mum worked night shift as well, so I don't know, it must have been a bit crazy then. You were the first one to go to university in your family, and you've been a voracious learner ever since. You might know Narelle from her stint as a business journalist and editor of ABC, Fairfax Media, SBS. She has interviewed everyone from the Prime Minister to the head of the Reserve Bank and Treasury. She has had a long commitment to sustainable business and leadership models, and she was the former editor of Financial Review's Boss magazine and founding co-chair of the Financial Review's Women of Influence Awards. In 2015, Narelle co-authored a book actually with Roden Jenoff, who was our first keynote speaker in Business Unusual, called New Women, New Men, New Economy, which shows how inclusive cultures drive innovation and sustainable growth. And she will share some of that with us this evening. Please join your hands and welcome Narelle Hooper to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. There's lots of exciting things happening, but I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes to bring us all together and think about the context to some of the discussions that we're having. And you'll notice that there's been a bit going on. And that challenge to focus on the longer term things, on the human things that unite us, it has become quite a challenge. And I'm thinking, just the last couple of days, we've had a monster quake, and I don't mean the Nationals, I mean New Zealand. And then before that, we had the trouble with the Trumpster. Now, we're just coming to grips with the Trump effect, and we have to work with this opportunity and all come together to see how we can individually, the words and the actions that we each have in a community are really important at times like this. Now, whatever you say about that, it's going to be good for commodities. And before Pauline Hanson's One Nation was celebrating about the Donald, we had the Brexit, okay? And it goes on a bit. We've had the situation with the exodus of asylum seekers and so forth. And with all of this going on, it does kind of get a bit tempting. You feel fearful, and we feel like closing in. And it's at a time where, while we've got to be secure and safe, it's actually really important for us to open out, because openness is how you create the environment for an inclusion, for innovation, and for those happenstances of creativity that create new products, services, and allow new ideas to come to fruition. And that's what keeps our economy and society moving and progressing. Now, we might be tempted to turn inward. Some people even want to build a wall, right? So I've got a better idea here tonight. I reckon we keep calm and go metro. And what's different about here tonight? You are coming together to work on a long-term plan. And at a time of 24/7 media cycles, when people are looking for whatever piece of media coverage can distract people from the day, this long-term focus and bringing together government, business and the community to have those really important conversations and work through all the challenges that you've got to do, this is the real stuff that we've got to focus on. So I commend you all for being here tonight, and I thank you already for your contribution. To all the people here, there's Patricia, Monica, there are many of you, so thank you. So my task is to look at some things that make for a sustainable city. Now, I'm just going to cover 3 tonight because I'm against the clock, but I wanted to say a sustainable city has to manage the climate risks and minimise. So to do that, we need to minimise ecological footprint, and we need to maximise our resilience. Now, I'll come back to that in a moment, but it's a sustainable cities are also designed for real humans, okay? And they're a society, not an economy. Now, there's a lot I could go into about transport and the built environment and all that stuff. There are other experts here tonight who are better qualified than I. But if I had to boil it down, these are the things that are really important. So let's look at climate change risk just briefly. Now, this is a really interesting international collaboration that from Addis Ababa, I always get that wrong, to Rio de Janeiro to Sydney. And this is a network of some 86 cities, it's not 40 anymore, who cover about 25% of GDP. And they're committed to actually sharing their knowledge, not just with the cities, but businesses and so forth, so they can actually drive meaningful and measurable change. And that means food, water, waste, the built environment and the social infrastructure, which is forever vital. Now, a sustainable city is also designed for real humans. Now, geez, what does that mean? Okay, I see it every time I see the parking signs on the side of the footpath. It says no parking, no stopping, no all the other things it tells you not to do. I sometimes wonder if we flipped that around and just had park here between the hours of X and Y, I might feel a bit better about the world, but that's just my little private thing. But thinking about the design of all the interactions between your business, between the city and people, so your customers, the other people in the community. And it was a great example to hear about Services New South Wales and also the social impact bonds. I thought they were fantastic. But we all rage against red tape, right? So another example, I'm sorry, I just want to show you that, right? Because that's an example. I think this was meant as a joke, so apologies to anyone from Mildura. But that's the kind of thing. So we talk about wanting to make the most of livable, friendly, walkable, happy cities, and then we go and put all these rules in place, and you wonder, do those rules actually apply to every situation? Now, I started to talk about red tape. We all know about red tape, right? And we want to get rid of the red tape. And I think it might have been the City of London at one point, they were experimenting with just getting rid of a whole bunch of rules. The thing you've got to watch is the grey tape. Now, the grey tape's the stuff that gums up the works. It's all the arse covering and the bits of paper that we shuffle, and it makes someone somewhere along the chain of all the decisions we have to make kind of feel like they're doing their job. But how is it actually impacting and improving what people get to do, and whether it's a business or other aspects of their lives? How is it actually improving the human experience and making for a safe and productive economy is the question. Another aspect to this that we often don't think about is art. So there's a very good body of work now that shows that the cities that are strong in art are actually among our most, not just cities, but nations, our most innovative internationally. And a really good example of, so we've got Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Portugal, Greece and Italy, not doing so well on the economic front, but they had very high levels of innovation. The countries and the cities that don't tap into that creative juices, the arts, are laggards in the innovation front in many respects. A really great example I liked the other day, I read, the mayor of the city of Wellington donated his car allowance to a program to support artists in high promising artists in early stages of their career. Now I think they also did something interesting with an eco bicycle or something instead of having the mayoral vehicle, but that you don't want to have to depend on that, but that's a really good example of how is the car actually helping that person do the job when 60 grand would be actually really material to someone who was trying to create something that might make the city a better place. And I think there was another example where someone else donated their car allowance to a smart energy fund as well. So this is a really important thing, and it's something that we, in many respects, we might have lost sight of for a few years. I've spent 25 years in business and I love it to bits, but we did go very far about down the road of competition and profit's got to come first. And we know now that without a society and without contributions by business to growing social good, the economy falters. And we've seen that in the US, and we see that those communities who felt there was a loss of leadership and they were fearful about their jobs and the prospects for their kids, that is a very real fear you've got to deal with. And recognising that it's not just about getting every dollar that you can out of something, you've got to leave money within the community. Gladys Berejiklian mentioned the social impact bonds. Michael Trail anticipates that this is the next big growth area, and it's where private equity was probably 10 years ago. And if any of you are interested in investing, embracing future trends, I'd recommend that. So it really gets to that social inclusion piece, and I'm just going to come back to that. So we used to think the market solved everything. We know now it doesn't. So we've got to start to find the middle path between what's good for business and what's good for the community. And that's those contested spaces very, very often. But I did, there is also now that the World Economic Forum has done a huge body of work about how important social cohesion is in building a strong economy as well, and that growing gap between rich and poor is actually a problem for your economy. Now in Australia, as Paul Keating said the other night, we're in better shape than many countries, but the numbers have been going the wrong way. So we've got to actually find some ways to actually value the things that often don't get valued out in our community and so forth. And on that score, whoops, I've gone back to that very special one, I think. So this is where I've just started to focus a bit of attention. So we're talking about now here a train line that between now and 2024 is going to deliver kind of more than double the passenger load. There's going to be huge opportunities around the rail corridor for development and so forth. Now, we've got a big affordability of housing issue in Australia, but particularly in Sydney. So I've been looking at what are some different models, because the developer first model, where the developer takes their traditional 30% cut, isn't going to cut it in this environment. So we found very interesting out of Berlin, out of Germany. There's I think the concept to describe this is Baumgruppen, which is group housing, and it's where the developer's actually not involved in this instance. It's a group that come together. They're apartments, usually about 5 floors high, house about 20 to 25 people, and they have social, economic and ecological measures that they've got to meet, and it becomes a much more convivial space for people to live in. They decide what are the priorities for that community, but also it's cheaper, and it's about 10% of housing now in Berlin. Now we've started to see that come to Australia more recently. Some early issues around banks not being a bit not keen to fund this, but this is one in Melbourne. This is a group called Nightingale, which is a group of people who have come together to develop this concept. And that's I think they're done in Brunswick in Melbourne. And they've got, so instead of, interestingly, I know everybody likes a laundry, but in that housing group, they decided that they were happy to share laundries and have the laundries kind of communal, and get the extra space in their house. And then they've got space on top for a community garden as well. Now, that'll house a few people. It's 25 units. There are now about 5 of these properties being developed in Australia. Perth's looking at it. I understand Urban Growth is taking a look at this as well. It requires some different thinking in terms of what we'd expect of developers, of the banks and so forth, but a really interesting and high potential model to reduce the price of housing and increase the density of housing that we need to. And that's just a bit of a summary of what, in Australia now it's known as the Nightingale model. And so you see the social, ecological, neighbourhood contribution and financial. So it's a very interesting model, and not by a mad bunch of greenies, by a mix of business people who just care about the community that they're in. So, and that's just my message on that, that the housing aspect of this now is too important to be left just to the market and to what we've traditionally expected of developers. So all of this is just a brief summary. That's where we were, where we owned a lot of stuff, and where we're going, it's a kind of asset-light generation where we're going to have to share some more things. How many of you have a drill, for example? How many of you use your drill every day? Just a good example. And shared access and reputation is really important, but just to skip through that now. So the thing in all of this is the leadership, and it requires leaders who bring us together and work on that strength and building common mutual interest and communities of interest. And it's really tempting to go top down and have the authority figure to tell you, I'm going to make this country great again. But it's only going to be achieved by us all working together. And it's a really important message. It's really challenging often when we're coming from state, local, business, all the different perspectives and the pieces of the truth that we have. But this is how the work's going to get done in the decades to come. So I look forward to hearing more from our other speakers, and I'd just like to thank you, and I'll see you back later for the panel. Stay calm, go Metro.